Chapter 16. Doctor, the nurse calls. It's the young boy from surgery. I'm afraid we're losing him. Excuse me, says the doctor, turning to follow her. Please, I beg. Let me see him. All right, the doctor agrees. Come with me. Father and I follow the doctor into the intensive care ward where Peter lies. I hurry over to Peter and hold his hand. It is cold, and then he opens his eyes and stares into mine. Find my family, he whispers. Tell them. I will, Peter. I promise. You go to Palestine for me. I will. Remember. And then he sighs and closes his eyes. The nurse listens to his heart and feels his pulse. She shakes her head. I sink down to the floor and weep. I cry as if my heart will break, not just for Peter, for all of us, left without our families, without a country to live in, left alone and broken to somehow carry on with our lives. Father comes and puts his arms around me. I cling to him like I'm a baby, my head on his chest, sobbing. Finally, he pulls me up. I'll stay here, he says. This boy will have a proper funeral, he vows. He won't be thrown into a nameless grave. I'll arrange it somehow, and I'll go to the authorities to see if I can locate any of his family. In the meantime, I think you have someone you want to find. I nod. We'll meet back here at the front entrance at 6 o'clock, Father says. I nod again and make my way out toward the street. I don't know the city of Lodz. I knew only the ghetto, so I must ask directions. At Buchenwald, we were given free train passes for travel to find relatives, and they give us some cash for our journey. I stop a young man on the street and ask him for directions on how to find what used to be the ghetto. The streetcar takes me right up to where the old barbed wire gates had been. I remember so well looking at these streetcars from the ghetto, especially when we used to cross the wooden bridge over the streetcar tracks. The Nazis didn't even want Jews walking on the same street Christians used, so they had built a footbridge over it. I remember a young German soldier who used to stand at the foot of the bridge and take pot shots at Jews hurrying to and from work, efficiently killing all those he fired on. Where is he now, I wonder? Safely at home with his family, the murder of his innocent victims to go unpunished? As I walk down the streets of the ghetto, I look around and feelings wash over me. Memories. Remember had been Peter's last word. How will I ever forget? Once in the ghetto, I know where to go. My heart is beating quickly. Would she have been able to leave me a note? The streets are not packed with people as they once were, but you can see the poorer Poles have moved back into these apartment buildings. Perhaps people live in our old apartment. Perhaps. And then I see her. She is sitting in front of the apartment building on a small folding chair, reading a book. Her flaming red hair gleams in the sun. She is Rosa, and yet she's not. She's slim, but not the skinny waif I once knew. Her face has a healthy glow underneath her freckles. I stop and stare at her. I can't move. I am too overcome. She is alive. She is healthy. She is the most beautiful person in the entire world. Suddenly she drops her book, turns her head, and looks directly at me as if an angel had whispered in her ear. He's here. He's here. She stands knocking over the chair, and then she runs. She is not smiling. She looks worried as if she's not sure it is really me. I can't seem to move. I'm frozen to the spot. She reaches me, stops inches away, and looks up into my face. Slowly, gingerly, she raises her hand, and her slim, cool fingers touch my cheek, my lips, and then I close my hands over hers and bend my head down until our lips touch, and my arms are around her, and I hold on to her and she to me, and we are both crying, and then I pick her up and swing her in the air, and we are both laughing, and then she speaks. These dreadful people took over your apartment, and they wouldn't even let me leave word with you for them. But I barged in and got your stuff from your cupboard, and so every day for the past 3 weeks, I've come here with my chair and a good book, and I've waited because I knew you'd come back. I just knew it. And she kisses me. You look wonderful, is all I can think to say. So do you, she replies. You're so tall. How did you manage to grow? It was all that nettle soup they fed us, I answer. Little do they realize that it was just chock full of vitamins and minerals and everything. She laughs. Her laugh rings out, and I feel as if it is spreading in ever-widening circles, and that it will soon cover the entire continent. I love you, she says. I love you too, I answer. And suddenly, we don't know what else to say. There is so much to tell, but how much pain in the telling? We are reluctant to break the spell of pure happiness. She runs back to fetch her book and the chair. I take the chair from her. My white knight, she teases. Always at your service, my lady. Come, she says, let's get out of here. My pleasure. It is a beautiful spring day, clear and mild. Rosa takes us on a streetcar to a large park. We stroll down the paths hand in hand until finally we sit on a bench. The bench has a sign that reads, "No Jews allowed." We sit. We can't stay here, I say to her. There's no place for us here anymore. Rosa takes my hand. Palestine, she says. Yeah, I reply, and then hesitate before I add, if you'll come with me. Is this some kind of proposal, she says? I sink to my knees in front of her. If you'll have me, if you could, if you would. Yes, she says. I leap up and shout to those around. She said, yes, we're to be married. An old lady walking by stops and says, God bless you. You deserve some happiness now. Thank you, I say. Sit down, Daniel, Rosa says. I have to tell you something. I sit. I know by the tone of her voice that this is bad news and hard to tell. It's about Erica. I catch my breath. I saw her. You saw her? But where? How? I started visiting the displaced persons camp looking for you. As you know, all the camps have compiled a list of the people in them. Plus, they have a master list with the names of the people from other camps. At Waldenburg, I saw her name. She was in the infirmary. She was very ill, Daniel. Go on, I urge. She was so happy to see me. She had been marched to Gross-Rosen and had hid in the infirmary the day they evacuated the camp. She simply refused to die until the Russians came and she was liberated. But then, she had no more strength. I held her hand and sat with her, Daniel. I didn't leave her. I stayed with her until she died. She wanted so much to know what had happened to you and your father. Then she pauses and looks at me, almost afraid to ask. I swipe at my tears. Father's alive. He's here in lots. Thank God, she says. And she adds, I do have some good news. Friedrich made it through. He's living with us now, part of the family, really. Your family, I say? What happened? My father was killed early in the war, she says. We found out just a few weeks ago, though. My older brother, my mother, and I. We were liberated by the Russians on January 19th, 3 long months hiding in a cellar. Your little brother? She shakes her head. Typhus. He caught it while we were in hiding, and we couldn't help him. By the time the Russians came, he was too weak and dehydrated to survive. But to have 3 members of your family alive now, Daniel? Why, Daniel, it's practically unheard of. We're so fortunate. So many are the only ones left. Entire families are gone. She pauses. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that millions of Jews were killed. Millions. And each one, a mother or a sister like Erica or a brother like Peter. I put my head in my hands. How will we have the strength to carry on, I say. We will do it for all those that couldn't, she replies firmly. We will name our children after those murdered, and we will go to Palestine and help build a country. We will dedicate our lives to making sure this can never, ever happen again. I look at her, I take her hand, we get up and walk together, and I know that love is a precious, precious thing, and I know that I am lucky, despite everything, to be with Rosa today. Still, I will keep my pictures, and I will tell my story, because if we forget, we will once again be defenseless against evil. If we forget how bestial, how brutal these school teachers, these doctors, these professors, these clean, upstanding citizens became, if we forget, then we too could become that way. And so we shall have to learn to stop these evils before they gain power, and it is too late. I put my arm around Rosa and hold her tight as we walk, and for the moment, I am content.